Greetings, everybody. Nick DiVirgilio here, and welcome back to my podcast, So You Want to Be a Musician. We've made it to episode number 5 in this journey together, and my guest for this episode is Mr. Mike Portnoy. Now, I've known Mike for about 25 years or so. We toured a lot together back in the day when I was in Spock's Beard in my short little stint with Fate's Warning, and Mike has built quite a career for himself. Of course, there's the giant success of the band Dream Theater, which he left for a good chunk of time, but now he's rejoined the band and they have a new record coming out soon, and they're embarking on a giant tour starting this autumn. But he's also been a part of a lot of very successful projects like Sons of Apollo and the Winery Dogs and Flying Colors and Transatlantic, just to name a few. He joined Avenged Sevenfold and Twisted Sister for a time. He's been in Neil Morris's band for, 20 years or so, and back in his early days, he put out educational DVDs and did a lot of drum clinics. So Mike is possibly the busiest man in all of rock and roll. Mike and I were both on Cruise to the Edge earlier this year. He was there playing with Flying Colors, and I was with my band Big Big Train. And while on the boat, Mike graciously agreed to sit down and talk to me about his experiences being a musician. Mike's been through it all in the music business, from starting Dream Theater in college to dealing with record companies and his bandmates, about with addiction, raising a family, and keeping a marriage going strong while going nonstop. My brief and candid talk with Mike is very insightful, and I do hope you enjoy it. If you're watching and listening on YouTube, I thank you very much. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Podbean, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, thank you very much. Follow the podcast. And now, my conversation with Mike Portnoy. I'm hanging out on the Norwegian cruise ship at Cruise to the Edge 2024. Yes. With Mr. Mike Portnoy.
Hey,
dude,
brother man.
How you doing, man?
Good.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me for a little bit today.
Nick, anytime, anyway, you can hear the people say.
Yes. Yeah. We've known each other for a long time.
Yes, we have.
And I've seen you go through a lot of stuff in your career. This podcast is called So You Want to Be a Musician. And my goal is to just talk to artists like you and players of all shapes and sizes about what it's like being a musician, because it's not always easy. And I know from personal experience with you and being your friend that you've gone through a lot of shit in your life, personal and otherwise, and you're still playing music at a super high level. So I start off everybody I talk to with the same question. I start deep and then we can kind of go from there. But, so the question is, do you need to play music to be happy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think being in lockdown during the COVID pandemic from 2020 to 2022 proved that.
Yeah.
I was still playing music at home, doing all these collaborative videos and session work and things like that. But it was, as long as I've been doing this, I started doing this, I guess, in the mid 80s, so almost 40 years ago. I've always been playing, always.
Right.
I never had 2 weeks off, much less 2 years off like we had during the pandemic.
Right.
So it made me realize how vital it was to be, not just playing drums or creating music, but like performing, interacting with other people, other musicians. And having those 2 years off really gave me an appreciation for what we have the blessing to be able to do for a living.
For sure.
But yeah.
So how did you, since you started a long time ago, the band had success early on, the career was exploding. What were some of the things you had to navigate personally to music was at the forefront, but what were some of the pitfalls as a younger person you had to navigate to do what you did?
Well, we formed Dream Theater in college in '85. And there was about 7 years between 1985 and 1992 before anything ever happened to Dream Theater. So those 7 years, we learned about perseverance and just getting beat up and getting knocked down and having to get back up and having to just, be patient and persevere. So, that really taught us. We went through 3 different singers. We went through different managers, different record labels, full starts and startups that just went nowhere. So that was the years that really formed us in terms of learning the ropes of how to navigate through all this. And then of course there's all the time before I even was in the business, when I was a young teenager learning how to play and, playing in my first bands. You know, those are all the years where you're kind of learning.
Right.
It's and in those early days, it's just about the music. You know, when we formed the band, for years and years and years, it was just about the music. But then as soon as we did get that success, about 7 years in, then we realized how much of a business is involved. And then there's so many other people, lawyers, managers, labels, crew people that rely on you. So you're realizing that it goes beyond just making music. If only it was as easy as just making music,
Right.
and, you know, we'd all live happily ever after. But if you really want to do this for a living and survive financially and in terms of building a career, you know, there's a lot of things you got to navigate through, and they don't teach that at Berkeley. Well, maybe they do now. I don't know. Maybe they do business.
Well, they teach the
music
business side of stuff, but they don't necessarily teach the personal side of stuff and how to relate to other people and your relationships and your marriage, you know, girlfriend, wives, and those kinds of things. It's pretty heavy duty stuff.
That's a whole nother level. I mean, the fact that I've been with my wife for 35 years now, through all the traveling I do, and I'm never home. I mean, other than the pandemic that I just mentioned, but other than that, I'm always on the road. And somehow I've maintained a marriage and a great family with 2 children. You know, it's very similar to you.
Yeah.
It takes a very understanding spouse to be able to live in this crazy, you know, environment and world that we live in with the touring that we do. But yeah, you learn to have understanding. And luckily in Dream Theater, all 5 band members are still married, all have kids and family. None of us have been through separations or divorces, which is unbelievable. But I think the reason it's worked for all of us for all these years is because we prioritized the family. Not all bands will do that.
Sure.
You're not going to ever always have a band where everybody's married or on the same page. You have guys that may just want to be single and out there mingling or partying all the time or whatever. But with Dream Theater, we had very like-minded priorities. And we always prioritized the family. And we always made sure if anybody wants to have a wife or their family along, they're always welcome, they're always invited. We'll make whatever arrangements we need. If we need to get another bus or whatever, we always put that first and prioritized it. And that's why we're all still married, and you know, we have such great family lives, which is not easy in this business. Going
into the marriage side and the relationship side that you've had, you guys work a lot. You have to have an understanding spouse. How do you navigate that when you're talking to the spouse? Listen, I'm going to be gone for 6 months. You have to be home taking care of the house,
right?
And the dogs and the just all the stuff. You're out doing big concerts and you have fans and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've been married a long time to Tiffany as well. She gets it, but it's. Is there a kind of advice you could just relay to a younger person who has a new girlfriend and they want to play music? It's such their passion. It's just how to navigate that, how to communicate that kind of stuff.
It's out of our control. It's really, you have to find a girlfriend or a spouse that gets it, understands it. I mean, when I met Marlene, I wasn't successful yet. I wasn't touring yet. I was delivering Chinese food in
right.
some struggling band,
right,
you know?
Right.
But then once things started, you know, going, God bless her. She was always understanding. She knew that this is what I had to do and what we had to endure in order to succeed. And God bless her, she raised our kids. She made them breakfast every morning, got them off to school while I slept or while I wasn't even home at all.
Right.
She always paid the bills at home and everything but you know, I just got lucky. I guess we get lucky if you find a spouse like that.
Do you think it helped that you started young with her and she saw you from the struggling stage to the more professional stage?
I think so. I think if I had met somebody and I was already touring and successful, first of all, you wouldn't trust that they were even there for you. You know, if I haven't had this scenario, but I could imagine the scenario if I met somebody who I'm touring and playing all these great shows, and you know, you meet a girl at one of your shows, you know, you got to wonder, are they gold diggers? Are they there because they love you? Or are they there because they just want to be clinging onto a rock star?
Right.
But being with Marlene from before any of this happened, I know that her motives were pure and that she, you know, loved me, and everything else that, you know, came along was just a nice, you know, bonus. But you know, I guess you don't always know that if you meet somebody, if you've already been doing it.
Right.
But yeah, God bless her. I mean, you know, we've raised 2 great kids. My kids are both in their mid to late 20s, and they're doing their stuff now. And
right. in the art worlds too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're in the entertainment world too. So
Yeah, Max is touring with 2 different bands,
Right.
and Melody's doing shows and theater production and stuff like that. And yeah, but they grew up
in it.
in it. Yeah, they grew up literally on the road with me from when they were, 2 years old.
Right.
Walking around, we're looking for catering backstage. That's
Right.
that was the norm for them.
Cool. Now, what do you say to a young person about the whole world of partying and, navigating that when you're in a successful, I mean, there's a lot of temptations when we're on the road, of course. What kind of advice can you relay to a young person that's just stay away? Just, just...
It works for some people. Some people can do it in moderation or even not in moderation and get away with it. But then history has shown the Keith Moons and the John Bonhams of the world.
Yeah.
Some people don't make it out alive. I'm fortunate to be here at I'm going to be 57 next month, and I had a long streak of sobriety in my life, and it's funny. I was out on the road with you when I, back in 2000 when I gave up drinking back then. Spock's Beard and Dream Theater were out together, and I at that point. That was early 2000. My kids were just being born. They were young. And I knew that for me, the drinking was out of control. And I had to do something about it because, I was in my early 30s at that time. And, I didn't want to become a John Bonham or a Keith Moon with newborn kids and everything. So, yeah, the partying and the temptation is always going to be out there. But, depends on the band you're in. Like when I got sober back then, I had a band that was very supportive of it. Nobody else in Dream Theater really drank or partied too much. It was always me hanging out with the other bands that I was touring with or the crew guys or whatever. So when I made that decision back then, they were extremely supportive over it and helped me with it. And
It's good. It's good to have friends.
And, and then there's, people can do it. It's just, it depends on your personality. I have an addictive personality, so for me, that was always something I had to really keep an eye on.
I gotcha.
And try to control it as best as I could. And at that point in my life, I had to do something about it, because I was at such a fragile early age, and with my children being as young as they were.
Now, when you did give up drinking and go through that period, how did it affect your playing as a musician?
Well, I would
did you
certainly
see a difference?
Yeah, I would think so. My stamina was better. My mind was sharper. My body was healthier, and now I'm a fat old slob.
Nah, not even close.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely. That clean living absolutely was a great thing for me in my life at that point, for sure.
Cool. So now, what do you, as far as your playing is concerned, almost 57, still playing at a super high level and rocking out every night when I see you play. How do you keep it going? What do you do with your playing, with your physical self, to keep your playing at such a sharp edge?
I don't know. It's weird because I was saying to you before we started the camera that you're looking great, you're looking fit and everything, and I'm I'll be honest, I'm starting to feel my age a little bit.
We all are.
Yeah. So I can't really, I'm not the kid I was, 20, 30 years ago. So you just got to do the best you can. I mean, for me, I play so much that it keeps me on my toes. Up until rejoining Dream Theater recently, I was playing in, so many different bands, which meant I was constantly playing, constantly surrounded by different musicians, which always inspired me. The different people I play with and the different style of music, all those 13 years outside of Dream Theater where I did all these different bands and everything. I mean, that inspired me, working with, Neil and Billy and all these different people in these different bands and configurations. That always elevated me and inspired me to try new things and to try to, just be the best I can. I can't really give much advice on, the healthy side of it's eating and drinking and sleeping and blah, 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 because I'm a horrible example of all that. But the playing has always kept me up, up to speed and keeps me growing and developing and the different scenarios. And now that I bring that back to where I am with Dream Theater, it's a cool perspective. Because I'm coming back to Dream Theater with, a whole dozen years worth of experiences that I've had outside the band, and they as well, they've gone the last 13 years with their own experiences that I didn't have with them. So now it's kind of exciting at this stage of my life to bring it back together,
Sure.
and have like this third act, if you will.
Sure.
At our ages, we realized when we decided to reunite and get back together. I'd be lying if I didn't say we didn't start to look in the mirror and look at the clock and say, who knows how much time we have left.
Come on, it comes to all of us, right?
Yeah,
Of course.
And the clock is ticking, and we realize, we're not going to be here forever, and we want to spend whatever time we have left together, making music with the people that we grew up with, and
Sure.
the people that we love, and so that's kind of where we're at this stage.
That's awesome. So to wrap this up, you have a young son playing in a rock and roll band. There's tons of musicians out there that are inspired by you, and hopefully me a little bit too. And you reach out to these people. What kind of advice you give a young person? You're going into this to start, like a couple of tips and tricks to navigate the first timer.
Right.
Whether they're going into a rock band or a country band or whatever, just a musician in general. Any kind of tips and tricks you would give a person?
It's tough business, and the music world is so different for young kids today than it was for us when we were coming up. In the 80s, 90s when we were coming up, we obviously didn't have the internet, and the music industry was ruled by record companies and corporate decisions. Unless you were on MTV or in Rolling Stone magazine or being played on the radio back then, you couldn't do anything. You had to have a label in order to record an album and to be able to afford studio time. Now it's completely different. You don't need to book studio time. Everybody can make albums in their homes, in their basements. Everybody can release it on their own, on the internet between Instagram and YouTube and Spotify. So there's a whole new world for young up-and-coming musicians that we didn't have. And there's an upside and a downside. Back in those days, for us, there were thousands of bands selling millions of records. Right. Now there's millions of bands selling not even thousands of records, probably hundreds of records,
right.
if that. So there's pros and cons, but I think I look at my son Max. He's in a great position where he's in two different bands, one of which he built himself. He has his band Tala, right, that he built from the ground. He picked all the members and had this vision of what he wanted their sound to be, and he writes all the music for the band. So he writes everything on guitar, bass, and drums, demos it all himself, and gives to the band to learn. So he's got a great creative outlet over a young up-and-coming band where he can build it from scratch and really see his vision. And then the other thing he's doing, he got a gig playing drums for Code Orange, which was an established band, right, 2-time Grammy nominated, touring with all the biggest bands in the world, playing all the arenas in the world. So he's getting to have that experience as well, playing with an established band. And I guess, like we said earlier, our kids grew up around this. So I think Max has a great head on his shoulders, not only for playing and writing, but also how to navigate through the business. A lot of people ask him, did you learn this from your dad? Did you learn that from your dad? And he always says, well, indirectly. I never really taught him this. And if he comes to me with a question, of course I have an answer. But right, he, just from being around it, he's learned on his own, watching and viewing and living it. So I would say for young players and musicians out there, just embrace the ability to do things on your own terms. You're not having to be at the mercy of a label that's going to tell you, you need a hit record, you have to co-write with Desmond Child, or, right. You don't have to do that anymore. You can make your music on your own terms, get it out there on your own terms. But that being said, there's still a lot of work involved. Right. And you still need to get on the road, and touring on the road is difficult. It costs money. It's hard to make money, right, these days for young kids. Thank God we've been doing it long enough where we can do these gigs that are with, whether they're our bands or other bands, but they're, we already have names for ourselves. So it's a built-in support system.
Sure.
But, it takes years or decades to build that. It's not going to come immediately. But, it's a whole new world out there, and I could only view it through Max's eyes. And, he's a good kid that's doing it well so far.
Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course.
Best of luck with the new Dream Theater stuff. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah,
it's going to be awesome,
exciting.
I'm sure. And have fun on the rest of the cruise.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks, man. I appreciated you.
Always.
Well, there you go. What'd you think of that? I personally really enjoyed the conversation with Mike because I appreciate his openness and his honesty about everything he's gone through in the music business. And he's stuck with it, and he's been going strong, and he's still going as strong as ever. We did keep it short because we were on a cruise, right? Wasn't there to sit down and just do interviews the whole time. We were enjoying ourselves being on the boat. And again, thank you, Mike, for being part of my podcast. Again, if you're watching and listening on YouTube, thank you. If you're listening on Podbean, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, thank you. And join me again in a couple of weeks for episode number 6 of So You Want to Be a Musician. Cheers, everybody.